So we're continuing on with our discussion of the major arcana. There are two that we have not completed as yet. One is the world, which we're going to do tonight, and the next one is the fool. And I don't know. We may not be able to do the fool next week, but you'll have to watch for the notices one way or another. Okay. And it may be because of a personal reason with me, but it may be because of current events, which if current events are going to be noisy next week, I don't want to detract from the fool, because that's an important card. And
what a time to talk about the fool, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, we'll try to do it. Pardon? We'll try to do it next week. We can't glue ourselves to the television all the time anyway.
We need something to look forward to.
Yeah, something to look forward to that's positive. Fair enough. Samantha's got the right idea, I think. Okay, so tonight we're going to do the world, and what we're talking about is the major arcana of the tarot deck. And the major arcana are archetypes that relate to every human life. And so if you're fully aware of the archetype and the energies in the archetype, then you're going to be much more prepared for life. And that's why we call it the roadmap for life. And so the reason we're talking about it in multiple different ways is to sensitize the audience to different ways that these things can come up. But by far, the world, probably the world is the most interesting of all of them. And the reason for that is that it represents individuation from a Jungian point of view, at least to me, and why it's here on this YouTube channel. Because Dr. Jung's entire oeuvre is about individuation in the end. And so we're going to go around the room and first talk about what it means to each of us, and then we'll go on and get into some substance. So Jordan, you want to give us a précis here?
Sure. To me, it started out the world is Leo, Scorpio, Aries. Aquarius and Taurus. And so you're dealing with all four elements: the fire, the earth, the air, and the water. And what's interesting from an individuation standpoint, this is when it all comes together. This is like the wheel card, but it's a larger wheel card, and it incorporates everything. So you may have been on a merry-go-round on the wheel, but you're on a carousel in a three-dimensional living world, literally, with a world. So to me, the world comes together for all other 21 cards to feed through. And at the point of the world, there are no more cards. You have all the cards within, would be my simple short.
Okay. Raquel, you want to go ahead?
I'm just going to point out that usually the world card has a shape of an egg in the center of the card. So even though is the final card of the major arcana, is also the indication of something new, because the egg also represents a birth of something new. So even though you're finalizing a process that comes with the integration of opposites, and it's not integration, it's actually kind of a bit of a struggle of the opposites, in the world, even though you're integrating both opposites. and that leads you to another restart, to another birth. So that's it.
Right. Okay. Samantha, do you want to
Yes.
comment?
So I like this card. I like this card. I like that, at least in mine, and you can interpret it in different ways, that this female bodied, although it can be seen as androgynous depending on the representation. To me, it's joyful, and I look less at the signs around it for me because I'm less familiar with astrological symbolism, other than I'm a Taurus and I see that represented here. But it has to do with, to me, like celebration, as well as this wreath here is like laurels to me. So it's receiving the benefit of something that you put some type of energy or work into. Kind of like the 10 of Wands, except on a more major level, and that has to do with your individuation. I see the red. We talked last week about red meaning desire, and I just noticed that as I was looking at it. So I wonder if the red, what you're getting is something that is desired. But like Raquel said, this is, and you can see the infinity symbols implied in with the way that the red cloth wraps around. It's like a 3D infinity symbol that, although in this moment, you're receiving laurels, you're able to kind of stop and celebrate for just a second. You're also, it's going to happen again. So it's not like a state that is permanent. I think it's just like you're reaching a higher plane and maybe plateauing there for a while, and you're trying to get to another higher plane. The last thing I want to say is, well, two things. One is I have a question about these wands. So I was like, why would there be two wands? And I'm thinking that has something to do with balance, like as above, so below, as without, so within. It's part of integration is learning that, like how to integrate yourself into the world around you. And then lastly, no, two very short things. One is that for me, this represents like coming out of my mind and more into the world, like putting what I believe and feel into practical use, self-expression, like being an adult in the world. And then my last question would just be, what is this banner about? What color is it supposed to be? I don't know if it's supposed to be purple or black, but I'm sure there's some symbolism in the color there. And also, okay, one more thing. She is looking back as she's moving forward. It's debatable whether she's looking back or just kind of out, but I think that that's important too. It's like you're able to move forward with the benefit of what you know.
Right.
From your lived experience thus far.
Okay. Annabelle, do you want to speak to the world?
Yeah, sure. My card is very similar to Samantha's. Yeah.
Okay, you have the Marseille deck.
Yeah, it's Marseille, a little Italianate. Scarabeo is the company that makes this one.
Yeah.
So I loved what Samantha just said about coming out of my mind and into the world. When you mentioned that this is a sort of culmination and a representation of individuation, that's what I would consider individuation to be in my, kind of novice state, is if I can stop making up the stories in my head or trying to read somebody else's mind or trying to project what might happen, and just kind of take things as they come, give with my experience. And also, I said this to someone yesterday, that the future is yesterday, in that sense of that yesterday, tomorrow, and right now are all really the same moment. And that moment doesn't allow for me having a theory about it, or for me applying something when I was 7 years old and I fell off my bicycle or anything. So also, being a great admirer of Tolstoy's work, and particularly of War and Peace, I can't help but see this image on this card, unlike any other card, as being Napoleonic and being a triumphant symbolism, with the lion, with the bull, with this eagle, with this angel. That to me is a combination of successful, and I know in War and Peace, of course, Napoleon does not win, and it's Kutuzov whose great strategy is what wins, but that's the great blending that War and Peace creates for us, is that War and Peace are not so different, and that failure and success are not so different. And the image of one being the emperor of the world compared to just being Kutuzov, who's kind of like, well, you guys might not really like what I'm thinking right now, but let's just try it out, you know, in his humility and his, he's not quite a bumbling character, but relatively compared to Napoleon, he is. So I think that's all I want to say, except I want to remind, Skip knows this better than the rest of you, that every single week that I have been on this call, and all the weeks when I catch up in between, my life has directly reflected the card. And this one I've been, I mean, I only looked at it today, right? Because you sent it today. I took it out, I looked at the image, and I wondered, oh, what's this going to be? I'm moving January 25th, which I did not know as of a month ago, but the Tower card is what started that. So just in terms of the major arcana, it was like, of course, the Tower card. And then of course, when we complete the major arcana next Monday, the following Monday I'll move. I'll be in a truck on that Monday. So
you'll be the fool.
I'll be the fool, but hey. Better than
ready to go.
Ready to go. Absolutely. Yeah. With Hermes, you know, little wings on my feet for sure.
Yeah.
I love your lack of resistance to the engagement in that process.
Hey.
So meanwhile, Patricia has raised her hand, so she would like to speak.
Yes. Well, I'm learning with you guys this. I'm not an expert, but since there's a circle in this card, and that means completion, and inside there's the figure of a woman, I was wondering, and this is a question for all of you, I was wondering if when we liberate our inner Sophia, because this woman could be Sophia, right? Mm-hmm. If when we liberate our inner Sophia, could be that a moment of completion. So it could be like the end of the road. I don't know. I might be completely lost, but
the road doesn't end, but yes, it's the end of this cycle.
And you bring up the point of transcendence, because once they all come together, then expansive occurs.
Right.
Just to give the viewers an idea of the Sophia idea, it comes from a Gnostic myth, but just very quickly, it's this idea that within materiality there are sparks of this divine feminine presence known as Sophia, and we're more or less all blind to them, but the only way that we can really restore ourselves to our original state is to free up those divine sparks of Sophia that are hidden within man and materiality.
Right. And Sophia also relates to wisdom, and indeed in some Bibles, Sophia and wisdom are the same thing, and it's the feminine aspect of God. And our patriarchal religions have tried to cover that over, but it appears in Proverbs, so it goes back well before Christianity. And so Proverbs 8:1-32
And then Elisa Markov brought that up as well. Even pre-Sophia is Hakma, which is a feminine noun in the Hebrew. Sophia being also a feminine noun. And like you said, lost. It then, 150 years later, was translated to pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A, which is a neutral noun. And that kind of goes to speak to your saying it's been kind of
Well, there's no
mixed.
translation, but there is actually. Pneuma means spirit, but Hakma means wisdom in Hebrew, and Sophia also means wisdom. So they're two different languages name for wisdom. So in the Hebrew Bible, where wisdom would have been written in there, it would have been spelled Hakma.
Well, right, but what I'm saying is that Hokmah is a feminine noun, and so is Sophia, but then Pneuma is neutral. And so what happens is the femininity is lost. Eliza Markov did a wonderful presentation, maybe you were there, that Skip had, on how the feminine was literally lost in translation over several hundred years. And then
suppressed, indeed.
Or edited
Yeah.
out purposefully.
I don't think that the world card, even though is a final stage of something, I don't believe that you have to look at this card as the final cycle of individuation. I think that it's easier to believe that, like, if you liberate your Sophia, you're only liberating a part of it. There's another journey to complete, you know. So even though the world is very powerful, you can't look at it as something literal, because the journey will begin again, and it will begin pretty soon. So you have also to be ready to the new cycles and transformations that comes with it, I think.
Right.
I think that's a really good point, making the mark of the milestone in the moment where a specific cycle of individuation has completed, but it never disconnects to stop. So you're on the move, maybe not across the finish line, but onto, here's some more stacked stones. Here's another trailhead. Now I'm going to expand out or in a different way.
I think that the word that you used, like moment, is very appropriate for this card. It's really a moment.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it's the way that an octave, the last note in an octave is the first note in the next octave. It's that idea.
Right. Yes.
Wonderfully put.
And I have a question. Maybe Skip, you can answer this. Is when it refers to wisdom, you know, you've talked about there being more than one kind of wisdom. So there's and especially you've talked about logos and eros. Then we had that class where you and Nick kind of are coming from different points of view. But my understanding of the type of wisdom that are referring to in Sophia is not, correct me if I'm wrong, not the logos side.
Oh, definitely not.
It's more of the emotional, intuitive, like feeling side, right? I guess Nick wouldn't agree. I think Nick would say it's both, and Skip, you're saying
it's definitely both. It is absolutely both,
okay,
without a shadow of a doubt.
You guys had a great pause there,
it's
and
eros?
Samantha asked a great question earlier. What's up with the 2 wands? And that's a great observation, because if you look at the magician, he has the 1 wand up and he has the 1 finger, the body wand, down. So what happens is when you come up to here, your question, why 2 wands? She's got all the tools on both the masculine and the feminine side, 1 up, 1 down. So she's not just starting, she's got a full handle on life at that point. So that's one iteration to speak to why does she have 2 wands.
So, so Nick, did you finish your preliminary discussion here? I haven't taken my turn yet. So
Well, you go ahead, and I think we'll have reached that 30-minute mark that we discussed, and then I'll just go ahead and tear through those slides that I have.
Was Raquel gonna tell us her impression of the card though? Because I seem to remember that Raquel is also going through these tarot cards experientially, much the way I am. I think I remember you saying that, Raquel.
Yeah. For me, the experience of the world card was actually realizing that it was just a moment, you know, and life goes on. And that is a very hard thing to realize, because I think it's a card that creates a very big expectations, you know, like I think you can like look at the world card and expect something big and grandiose, you know, and it's not grandiose. It's like, but you see your everyday life and the small stuff that you do in your everyday life, everything becomes more meaningful to yourself, you know, like it's a part of your life that you are starting to live in a daily process, that everything that you do has a powerful meaning. But you know, for me it was just like gardening, you know, just creating stuff out of the ground, you know, and cleaning my house and living without having panic attacks, you know. It was like, that was my moment, you know, but it was just a moment, you know. It was not something grand, you know, happening in my life. So it's actually beautiful, but it's simple. It's really simple.
Right.
Thank you.
Can I say something in response to what Raquel just said? Because she reminded me of, you know, when I said that each of these cards has been literal in my life. I'm remembering one of those days, which I was remembering as I was talking about being in the moment just now. November 16th was a Monday, and our card that night was death. And my dog had died that day.
Mhm.
And I had the experience, and I spoke about it that night in between tears, because I cried for 10 days then, which partly had to do with the card. But I had that very like physical experience of, now he's alive and I'm in that moment, and now he's dead and I'm in that moment. And there are few experiences in life when one is really brought into the moment that clearly, as in like the presence of the difference between life and death. So anyway, that's why I wanted to speak to that.
Well, but he's not dead.
Yeah, there was a moment. There was a moment where there was a transition. Maybe we won't call it death, but there was a transition where he was in my lap and he was breathing and he was warm and his heart was beating. I heard them and felt them. It was sensory. That's why I say it's physical. It was a physical experience.
Sure,
and
sure.
Then there was a physical experience that was other.
Yeah.
Okay,
other. No, I understood. But yeah, I mean, I've heard people who have witnessed executions, but who say it's like a magic trick. You know, if they execute someone by lethal injection, it's like a magic trick. They're breathing one moment and dead the next. But they're okay. Well, I want to take this a little bit further, because I think this card also relates to enlightenment. Okay, it relates to both individuation and enlightenment, and and in some decks it's called the universe card, and so it's a way of seeing. I mean, when you become enlightened, presumably, and I'm not claiming perfect enlightenment here, but you see your place in the universe. And but I agree with Raquel that, you know, it can be just any moment in time. So I have here Jung's answer to Job, and the very last sentence in Answer to Job, I'm going to read to you. That is to say, even the enlightened person remains what he is, and is never more than his own limited ego before the one who dwells within him, whose form has no knowable boundaries, who encompasses him on all sides, fathomless as the abysms of the earth and vast as the sky. So that's the last sentence in answer to Job. And so the point is that even the enlightened person remains what he is. And so as you have synchronous experiences like Annabelle does or has had recently, you see more and more that you're actually a part of something bigger than yourself. And so I also think of this card as relating to individuation, because what it does is it recognizes, you know, your inferior functions too, your dark side. And so as we've watched the news this week, you know, I see the things that the president did, and I say, boy, there but for the grace of God go I. You know, because at some level of lunacy, I could do such a thing, right? I understand that I could do such a thing. I would never, but because I've taken my oath to the Constitution 7 times, so I'm afraid it's dyed in the wool, and I was born into the military, so, and I still carry an ID card, so I would never do that. You know, I am a bit worried about how bad this is going to be, but at the same time, I know that there is no way on God's green earth that Donald Trump is going to continue as president. And you know, I don't deny that there can be blood, more blood.
That is, if we live in a just world.
Well, there will be blood, okay, and so just or not, there will be blood, and blood is what wakes us up and what causes us to change as human beings. This is one of the fundamental teachings of the Red Book, which Jung was writing during World War I, and talking.
Well, as you brought up a great point with that last line of answer to Job, where even the awakened within is still within the vessel of the ego, basically, and that enlightenment piece. The hanged man is in the same posture, upside down. He's asleep, unconscious, dreaming of floating clarity. This is upright, conscious of floating clarity, enlightenment. So that's a really good point you brought up.
Right, and so you know, the card obviously in just a everyday reading where you're answering whether you should take this boyfriend or not type thing. You know, obviously the world card, because I'm psychic, but obviously the world card is a good one normally if it's upright, and it's negative if it's reversed, but it relates to enlightenment, it relates to individuation, and even reversed, you're still in the world, you're still in the universe, and that's one of the things that you have to think about. Now, going back to the issue of wisdom here, I happen to have my handy dandy little pocket Bible, so let me read it to you. And of course, this is a translation that comes from Patriarchs. So anyway, Proverbs 11 through 32. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. Pride and arrogance and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. By me kings reign and rulers decree what is just. By me princes rule and nobles, all who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the paths of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me and filling their treasuries. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work and first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up, the first before the beginning of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water, before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. Before he that had made the earth with its fields, or that first of the dust of the world, when he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the mountains of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limits, so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him, like a master workman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world and delighting in the children of man. And now, O sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. So that's
Beautiful.
But it's pretty feminine, but it's the point is that we have ignored this. I mean, I didn't even know what wisdom was until Edward Edinger taught me, or where it was in the Bible or whether it was important. But wisdom comes with individuation and with knowing, yeah, I mean, certainly there's a part of me that's with the people who were insurrectionists, and on Wednesday, and yet I would not do that because that's wisdom, right? And so anyway, that's my homily for the moment.
I think, oh, sorry, Skip.
Go ahead.
There's a couple things. One is I would just like to know was that Proverbs that you mentioned before?
Yeah, that was Proverbs 8:11 to 32.
Proverbs 8:11 to 32, you said?
Proverbs 8:11 to 32.
Thank you. So, what was I going to say? Oh my God, hold on. Oh, I know. So I think it's also significant that one way that the world could be represented is by showing worldly items, it's talking about riches and things like that. And so I think the fact that she's naked, and doesn't have shoes on her feet, has banners, there's something about being aware that what you're inheriting, what you're receiving is not, it's separate from whether or not you're getting something material, that to me, it represents some type of confidence, which is also shown by the posture that the fool has it, or in the legs, and then I think one of the kings has it or something, one of the knights, I don't know. Anyway, but that is a type of confidence there. So to me, it represents the confidence of more like knowing who you are in such a way that you can take who you are into the world. Like earlier this past week, I have a mentor, another mentor who was talking with me about conflict with the family, because this is the first time I spent a holiday away from my family, and it was such a good decision for me. 2 holidays, it was Christmas and New Year's, and she was talking about how, like, at this stage in her life, because she knows who she is, she can be around her family members, a lot of whom would side with those the people who are rioting. But so she's found it very difficult because she doesn't agree with that at all. She's the only one in her family that's liberal, and she has like 8 brothers and sisters.
That's why you can't discuss religion and politics at family gatherings or in polite society.
So she was saying, though, that she's done enough work on herself. You know, she's a senior at this point, that she can better take herself into situations like that without getting totally undone. But it's because she knows herself. She can't always do it, but if she needs to, she can do it. So I look forward to that someday, but I wasn't ready. So it was sort of like an alcoholic avoiding a bar early in sobriety. It's like, I'm not ready to be around that and not be tempted to get into it. So I'm just going to
Right.
here.
That's fair enough. Okay, Nick, your chance.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh God, I hope I don't blow it. There's one thing that what you were saying, the last couple of lines from Answer to Job, which, Samantha, if you haven't picked that book up, you definitely should get it and read it, because it's, to me, it was such a moving piece of work for pretty much anybody who struggled with religion, and I would think even more so for women who struggled with religion. But something that you were saying there at the end about essentially the enlightened person still, living an earthly life, reminds me of, I believe it's a Taoist proverb where it's like, before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water; after enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water, which is just, phenomenal. Sums up the same thing very succinctly. Okay, so I've prepared a couple of slides that I want to share with you guys. And I don't have as much to say as I normally would, but I really just wanted to show these slides to give you guys an idea of some of the earlier historical depictions of this same card and the experience of this card. So let me get my share going. All right, can everybody see this?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay.
Pretty. Your graphics are improving.
Okay, so the world card here. Okay, so this is the card. This is the Bota card, and it's pretty much the same. There are some adjustments, some color improvements, and stuff of that sort, but largely the same. Okay, so these are. This card on the left, this image, I really just wanted to share this with you guys. I don't feel that it directly relates to the card, but I just thought it's just a magnificent image. And if you look closely, you can see that there is the Fool on the right-hand pillar here where my cursor is.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the Temperance card here. This is pretty much the Lover's card in the center. And then here at the top, the man and the woman are joined. So it seems to say, that in heaven or these otherworldly higher realms, the male and the female are joined, and it's only really down here on earth that we're completely separate from one another.
Nick, that may be the most clear expression graphically of that card I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It completely relates. I mean, more so even than the Mithraic one on the right, but keep going. I just wanted to interject that card, that image is structurally powerful and narratively powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is it a tarot deck or it's something else?
No, it's just an image.
Uh-huh.
I don't have the artist names for each of these images. I got them. Most of them, I've either seen them before, or I have a book called Alchemy and Mysticism, and it's just like over 1,000 alchemical paintings, engravings, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's exquisite.
So the one on the right here, actually, you know, last week we were talking about the whole aeon ion difference. This is the deity Ion that I was talking about, Samantha. So as you can see, it's very similar to the card in that it's surrounded by an egg shape or an ellipse. It's also got the wheel of the zodiac around it in the shape of an egg, and it just represents time as a whole. Okay, yet another one here. So these are both two alchemical images, and I want you to notice here on this, you know, there's in the world card, she holds the wands that are going up and going down. And here in this same image, you've got the same interplay of above and below going on. Also, flipping back to the previous one, we've got the ape holding the world here. And I take that to mean, you know, essentially before we have any clue about this, we're kind of just this monkey holding the world, just marveling at, wow, this is so strange and so miraculous. And then there's the same monkey down here at the bottom in this image. And I mean, this is probably 500 years earlier that this was made. And then this one here on the right, you know, also has the exact same egg image around it. And this is, it says Anima Mercury, which means the soul of Mercury. And here, yet two more with the zodiac around it and the 7 planets also on the inside there. And then, you know, we had talked earlier about how Hakma is a feminine word. And this image is actually titled the Goddess Hakma, the one on the right. Okay. Here are these two. And, you know, this one in particular really speaks to me because, you know, it's like we're talking about a card titled The World, and here it's like Mother Nature is feeding this baby off her body that is the earth.
You know, can I say something real
Oh,
quick?
of course, yeah.
It freaks me out how, number one, I just have to be honest, it freaks me out in general. I see the why it means what it means, but what in particular, what kind of freaks me out is that the eyes look as if, first it looks like to me they're looking up or they're looking up at us, but it also looks like they could be looking down, like, and you can, you know, when people look down and you can, their eyes aren't all the way closed, but you can tell their eyes are open, but their lids are down. It looks as if it could be that, and there's lashes underneath, and this is just a shadow on the brow. It's sort of ambiguous whether they're looking at me or looking down at the child that they're breastfeeding. Yeah,
it looks to me like her eyes are closed, but it you know, I'm not completely sure.
Do you see from that point of view though, when I now that I pointed it out? Yeah, it's kind of freaky.
You know, Nick, the card on the right, I mean, the world within the world, and that's like nourishing the world within. I mean,
yeah, and you could easily think of this, you know, the fool is suckling at the teat here, and
exactly,
you know, it's really the beginning and the end
at the same
all
time,
on one thing.
Yeah.
And then the image on the left, you know, I felt like it related because, you know, clearly you've got the woman and the man, but here the image in the center, not only does it look like it relates to the Mithraic god Ion, but it's also not clear whether it's a man or a woman, as with the card.
What's interesting is the moon is above the woman and the sun is above the man. And since that is actually indicative of an inner force, there's more of an ancient structure where the sun was feminine and the moon was masculine. So the masculine above the feminine and the feminine above the masculine from an ancient myth perspective. And then that's inner feminine anima, inner masculine animus.
Right. Did you have something you wanted to say, Samantha?
Yeah, I want to say that on the right, it's interesting to me that the globe takes up, like I would think, oh, it could take up just the tummy, because I've seen art like that where a woman's stomach is like painted with, her pregnant belly is painted with the world, because the womb is what gives birth to, you know, the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about it covering the entire torso, not just covering the entire torso, but in that weird egg non-torso like shape. And I think that that has to do with like all of these parts. The torso of a woman are all necessary to, well, every part's necessary, but necessary to feed the child. You know, what she eats in her stomach goes into her breast milk. And so it's everything that the child needs to survive, as well as covering the part of her torso that leads to her, you know, actual womb.
Mm-hmm.
But the questions I have are, what is the significance of the 3 little babies on the bottom? One is suckling from a goat, and the other, I think that's a fox or a wolf or something. I don't know. And then
Like a wolf.
a wolf. So I was wondering what that means, that there's 3 on the bottom and then one on top, you know, wondering what that means alchemically, or where's that coming from, do you think?
I honestly don't know. I would love to say that I do know and give some articulate answer, but I don't. If you want to look into this series of engravings, they're called the Atlanta Fugians engravings.
The Atlanta Fugians?
Atlanta Fugians, Fugiens. And maybe that'll give you a better idea. A lot of the times, you know, the animals that are seen, I mean, I guess it probably has something to do with she's out in the wild. She's up away from the city.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, you know, it's she's
I know one
nursing the child's instincts or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's exactly
I know
it.
that the
Nick,
wolf,
because there's that image interaction is typically always nourish your or nurture your self from nature directly.
I think
So
that
nourish your inner nature.
I think that it can speak to, in a broad sense, to our human reliance on nature. Like we need these animals and the elements, you know, just as much as we need our mother, essentially.
Mhm.
So there's that meaning, but also there's the ancient, I'm not sure if it's Greek or Roman myth of Romulus and who's the other one?
Yeah, that's
Ramus.
that's Roman
what-
mythology, I think.
That's
right
there.
And I believe that's on the right because they fed from a wolf.
Yeah.
She breastfed them. Yeah. So
Interesting.
some reference
Yeah.
to that.
The founders of Rome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, am I good to move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the image here on the left, as you can see, I think it's written mostly in German. Don't know what most of it says, but there is Sophia here. So it gets to that same idea that we were talking about earlier. And also, you can find this this image by searching Achamoth, Achhamoth, which is a Hebrew word that I understand is cognate with Sophia. And yet again here on the right, I don't know if you can see the text above this. Let's see here.
Are there approximate dates on these?
Not on the, well, I don't know about on the images. I don't think so, but I think they're all from the 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
But this image here on the right is French, I believe, and it means the dark and natural man of earth.
Right on.
Okay, so moving on.
Nice pictures, though.
Yeah, they're really great, and it's really, really wild to me, the striking similarity between the cards and the images. I mean, it's like this image has lived on for much longer than the tarot cards have been known.
Yeah, this is a great survey.
Archetypes.
Right. And particularly with this one, I thought this was probably my favorite image.
That's so cool.
Yeah, okay, so now moving into the card. So Jordan already said something about it. You know, the two cards that, in my opinion, should be compared with one another are the Hanged Man and the World. So just to go into some of the symbolism here, in the World, the Hebrew letter associated with it is this letter here, Tav or Tau, depending on whether you put a V or a U there at the end. So as you can see in the Hanged Man card, he's hanged from this letter, right? He's upside down. And then once we get to 21, which is just 12 reversed, it's the letter that's associated with this card. And I've also said earlier, when we were talking about the Emperor, when we talked about this card, maybe at another point, that his body makes this sulfur symbol here. And sulfur is a symbol for fire. It just means, just to put a quick meaning to it, it just means the fire within man. So that's upside down here. You know, he's, like Jordan said, kind of just unconsciously not really striving to grow, maybe just digging deeper into the earth rather than trying to turn back and look above himself. And then in the World card, there's the exact same symbol made by the head, the two hands, and then the two legs going down and crossing. Okay, so what I have written is the man is hanged upside down on the forces of Saturn, symbolized by the towel which he hangs from. But if turned upright, he would be dancing a jig. However, the lady in the World card is dancing a jig upon the forces which previously had served as a limitation.
So may I just say that the Hanged Man, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that idea of fire in the foot and leg area, which is above him, because there's again, it's that as above, so below thing, because he has a halo or light, or is it the setting sun, you know, around his head, which is, you know, light, that's also a reference to fire, you know, and the sun. So I think it's just, I think that's interesting, and I never caught that before.
Yeah, and it both has to do with fire and also with light, which, you know, light is also, you know, I guess they're kind of one and the same. But in the previous card, in the Judgment card, in the foreground of the card, you know, there's the man and the woman and the child. And if you look at the way that their bodies are arranged, they make the Latin word lux, or LVX, which also just means light.
Oh, wow.
So it probably has a similar illumination
Loose.
in this card, and also with the lux figures in the Judgment card.
By lux, do you mean loose? Latin?
No, like LVX.
LVX, lux. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the Latin. I think Greek for light is lukos, so similar, but not quite the same. Okay, so you had mentioned earlier the scarf that she's got wrapped around her body, and like you said, you know, she could be androgynous. That's how I've also learned about this card, is that this scarf covers the fact that she actually has both male and female body parts, and the scarf is hiding that.
You know, it might be worth saying at that point with that scarf too, since this comes after Judgment, there's an energetic ritual called the mummy in some Mithraic traditions, as well as some yogic traditions. And what it is you have a spiraling of the energy up the body. So Kundalini would rise, you know, below to above, but instead this is going, circling, spiraling from below to above. And it's basically a symbol of unwrapping the mummy. And so the resurrection that would occur in Judgment here is then coming to completion in that resurrection and renewal and her emergence right there. And there's only one last vestige of that almost symbol. There's a calligraphy piece of fabric in that card.
Yeah, and that's why she holds in her hands. I mean, in the Rider-Waite deck, it's just two wands, but in this card, it's actually a spiraling. I don't know what you call it, but Paul Foster Cates writes that he understood this to essentially be the visible form of energy.
Yeah.
Cool. You know what? On the other, so there's two things. One is, I wonder why. I seems like the point of covering up the genitalia would be to leave it ambiguous. So it's just interesting. I think that what you read said it's to cover up that they have both parts. Like, was there another image where both parts were shown and then they covered it up? Or is it just, is that something you're interpreting because it's implied?
Right here. I mean, look at the top here. Both the man
Where?
and the
Hold on,
woman
wait.
are joined at the very top.
Oh,
They're
there's
one
two
thing.
legs. Yeah,
But
I
then
didn't
down
see
here at
that
the
before.
bottom, they're separate. I mean, in this card, you know, we're looking at the iteration of them rather than being separate as being one. And I think that's part of the reason that I chose to show this. Like I said, also because it's just a great image, but really because, you know, there's the divine hermaphrodite up here in the top. And once we get around to the world card, we've essentially re-achieved this condition.
I see. I didn't notice it. I saw them. I didn't notice the lower body where there's just two legs as if on one body. I didn't see that until just now. So I thought they were just like huddling together. But
and I mean, it's also like, it might not be shocking to you and it might not be shocking to those of us who are familiar with these ideas, but I've definitely been in classes before and in conversations before where this comes up and people are just like, cannot fathom the idea of it being both in one. I mean, that's, you know, that's just a very dissonant concept for some people.
Gender.
Well, and that's one of the biggest problems across teaching anything is the both and, because everyone has been so brainwashed that they have to choose either or. And that stays logos, because either or is already predetermined. That's been erped up and hardened and dropped out already. Whereas both and is a living representation of the quote unquote choice.
Okay, so let me get through these last couple of slides because I feel like we've been here for a minute. Okay, so the scarf that she wears, again, there's some Hebrew letter symbolism going on here. It's in the shape of a calf, and if you look down here on the Wheel of Fortune card, it's the Hebrew letter calf. So she's cloaked in this majestic purple scarf, and I say majestic because you know, Jupiter is associated with a kind of benevolent king.
As well as I believe that purple, the reason why we associate it with royalty is because at the time the color purple became available, like in the world, in human history, it was rare to make, like it was difficult. It was it was an element, whatever elements were required to make the color purple were rare, so only royalty would have access to it. But it's spiritual royalty, you know, the divine.
Apparently also it was a color that Jesus was known for wearing, and also it's the color of the robes of Dionysus.
Right.
Okay, so let me just read what I have here. Notice in the Wheel of Fortune card, the bull of Taurus is turned inwards. In the World card, the bull of Taurus is turning away from the scene in the card. The fixed and earthly now turn away from the spiritual reality pictured in the World card. Earth is no longer seen as a realm devoid of God and the spiritual, but these factors are now realized as being ever present. The inner and the outer, the above and the below, the man and the woman, the extreme opposites of Saturn, the World card, and Jupiter, the Wheel of Fortune card, are now unified and no longer seemingly irreconcilable pairs of opposites. The fixed and binding earthiness of the bull of Taurus shrieks away from this. So if you look in this card on the left, they're all facing towards the wheel. And then on the right, the bull of Taurus of fixed earth looks back down, not looking in on this spiritual reality.
They're just being stubborn.
It could be, yeah.
I'm a Taurus. And the materialism thing is something that they say about Tauruses. So that makes sense to me that it would represent.
Well, like maybe materiality, but also I have a good friend who's a Taurus, and he's the type of person that, like, you cannot get him in a hurry to save the world. Like, and he's also the type of person, like, he is next to impossible to make mad. But if you do make him mad,
you better run.
He's a raging bull. He's a raging bull.
I relate. Yeah.
Well, you know, on that bull thing, on that line, the bull on the wheel there is inner animal who's coming in from the left, from the unconscious. And so now what happens is the bull is allied with the unconscious in the world because he's looking back to it. He's got it. He came from there. So there's a piece there that is one of the cornerstones she's bracing against at the bottom, where then is a lion who stays looking at us from the wheel too.
Mhm.
So there's one piece that's stable, figure, or the ground, which is the lion, and then the ground is really the bull who's looking back. So you get two different directions, and as the three dimensions, the bull's looking back, the lion's looking to us, and she's going vertically.
Mhm.
And then you
Okay.
flip that up
Yeah,
top.
Nick, our friend Jerome has a comment about one of your images. He
Okay.
says Nicholas's figure he referred to as Ion
Mhm.
is Faunus, the Orphic egg. Jung speaks of Faunus as Philemon in Jung's Black Book 7, pages 16 to
Yeah,
19.
I mean, it is Phanies, but I understand Phanies and Ion as being the same, this more or less the same deity. I mean, Phanies comes from Orphism, yes, and Ion comes from Mithraic belief or Mithraic cults. But I think that they were both more or less kind of like this child image of time. I guess the only difference that's worth noting with Ion is that he has a lion's head.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah.
What
But
is
if you search Ion deity on Google, it will give you both images of the lion-headed god that we're talking about and this image here, which is Phanies. But I understood them as being more or less the difference between Zeus and Jupiter and Greek and Roman mythology.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Well, and for
Okay.
Samantha there, really quick, just if you could jump back to that stone image of the ellipse of the egg.
You want to see that?
Yeah, just so also too for video to really settle in that comment right there on the right. That's the Phanies, that's the Ion aspect that was just being discussed. And I just felt for the video, it was important to have that shown to reinforce the point visually.
Okay, so let me get through these last couple of slides. So Raquel, it's taken me this long to formulate a response to your question about why I am always talking about Saturn. But
You can watch the recording.
so oh, is she not with us?
Yeah, she had to leave.
Yeah, she's watching on YouTube.
Brazil.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So in every single one of these cards, there are 7 cards. There is a symbol of Saturn, whether it be the T's on the chest, the 3 black T's on the chest of the Chariot, the black T on the chest of the Justice card figure, the Tau, the letter of Saturn, the T held in the hand of the Death card figure. There's a symbol of Saturn in the hand of the Devil, and the containers in the star card here have to do with Saturn and containment as well. Also, Saturn rules Capricorn, the card of the Devil, and rules Aquarius, the sign of star. And up to that point, Saturn has pretty much, we've talked about it in terms that we're almost exclusively negative. It's kind of a limiting force on you. And at this point, it changes from a limitation to dominion in the world card. So at every point that it's encountered along the way, it's kind of this thing that's a limitation to your growth. It's a limitation to the way that you see the world, whether it be your illusions about world, your delusions about self, your illusions about time, your illusions about things being fixed and materiality. And now in the world card, the effects of Saturn that you were hung from or hanged from in the Hanged Man are completely reversed. So to wrap up, I just have 2 quick passages I'd like to read here. Okay, so this is Dion Fortune from her book, The Mystical Kabbalah, where she is talking about Saturn and Binah, which is this sphere on the tree of life behind me here. It's considered to be the archetypal mother on the tree. Okay, so Binah, the great mother, sometimes called Mara, the great sea, is the mother of all living. She is the archetypal womb through which life comes into manifestation. Whatever provides a form to serve life as a vehicle is of her. However, it must be remembered that life confined in a form, although it is enabled thereby to organize and so evolve, is much less free than it was when it was unlimited, though also unorganized on its own plane. Involvement in a form is therefore the beginning of the death of life. It is limiting, binding, and constricting. Form checks life, thwarts it, and yet enables it to organize. Seen from the point of view of free-moving force, incarceration in a form is extinction. Form disciplines force with a merciless severity. So this is kind of what I base my thinking on Saturn about, and the whole idea of restriction and containment, as opposed to this ever-expanding force that precedes form.
Yeah, my comments about logos and eros
Right,
are
yeah.
applicable. Okay,
Right.
go on.
Okay, so this is the last thing, and this is from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes. Thou shalt separate the earth from the fire. Also think of the sulfur sign, which means fire. The subtle from the gross, suavely and with great ingenuity. It ascends from earth to heaven, and descends again to earth, and receives the powers of the superiors, the planets, and of the inferiors, the zodiac signs. So thou hast the glory of the whole world. Therefore, let all obscurity flee before thee. This is the strong force of all forces, overcoming every subtle and penetrating every solid thing. So the world was created. Hence were all wonderful adaptations, of which this is the manner. All right, so that's all I've got.
And that was written in 300 AD, something like that.
What?
Yeah, by Hermes Trismegistus.
And Trismegistus means thrice born.
Right.
I don't want us to go through like a huge tangent on all this, because I could do independent reading, but can I just ask someone to confirm this, which is, I used to think, why do people still study alchemy if we can't do it? But it's all metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think people actually really believed you could?
Oh
do
yeah,
that?
that's why it has such a bad reputation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
a
mean-
lot of the alchemists knew that they were dealing with the self, but they kept the parlor trick of we will be making gold to keep the process alive.
So,
So their patrons would fund them.
But yeah, and their patrons would fund them because stuff fell out of what they were doing that was useful, like gunpowder
Right.
and stuff like that.
it
Exactly.
birthed other sciences. That's another
Well,
way
it
that
births psychology.
it's a way that
Yep.
magic is helpful, because people, it's like when people do a spell or something. I'm reading this book called Real Magic.
Mhm.
When I feel like it, I put it down for like a couple months, but I was like taking notes and all this, and it's about how the pursuit of magic, people get confused when they think, oh, well, just because you do this love spell doesn't mean someone's going to give you a call or something. But I think by engaging with these practices, these ritualistic practices, it cultivates a relationship with yourself and your own belief and your own intuition. And through that, these other things can be born, like you said.
Right. So in this book, The Tree of Life by Israel Regardie, he says, nature is the great magical agent. Right?
Six
So
words.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Six
there are
words.
just a few things that I want to say. One, that alchemy, and depending on from which angle you approach it, there's so many different outlooks on it. But it's essentially a series of tasks designed to transform a stone, like you pick up a stone from your driveway, into gold. Obviously, all of that's a metaphor for developing your undisciplined mind into something that is likened to gold. But also, I mean, there are literal forms of alchemy that people do. I mean, there's something called spagyrics, which Paracelsus came up with. Do you know what that is?
No, I was laughing immaturely at the word because it sounds silly to me. That's
Yeah,
all.
it does sound kind of silly. But it's as I understand, it's essentially a process of like refining stuff used for homeopathy, stuff used for like natural medicine, and also homeopathy kind of has its roots in alchemy as well.
Little, where you give a little bit of something, the hair of the
Right,
dog.
like hills, like that whole principle. Yeah, I actually there's a young group in Asheville that before coronavirus happened, I used to go meet with, and the last meeting that I was able to go to was with a lady who is she's a practicing therapist. I don't think that she's a Jungian analyst, but she's also works with homeopathy and incorporates that into her practice. And she talked about how, you know, there are through lines between alchemy, homeopathy, all that Jung had to say about all the stuff. But I'm just pointing out that there, you know, it is definitely an analogy for doing work on yourself, but there are also like real verified forms of alchemy. Largely, it was unsuccessful, though. For anybody who really wanted to make gold, it was a no-go.
Yeah. And by the way, Raquel has this comment. Well, the legs in the image of the Rider-Waite deck are still forming a 4. So you keep saying Saturn, and I keep seeing Jupiter.
And the tennis rally continues.
Yes.
Well, I was just pointing out that she had said, I can't remember on which card, but one of the times where I was going on my bent about there being Saturn symbolism, and it's like there are 7 cards where there's Saturn symbolism, and it all works up to this card where it switches from kind of a weird cosmic slavery to the forces of Saturn to now it switches to a dominion over those same powers that have kind of been so binding and limiting to you at this point. But anyways.
I may do a quick survey at some point when I have some time and just try to blitz an hour and know that if I go looking for it, I'll find it, and I'll get some Jupiter and I'll get some Saturn so that I can make my tennis match referee rule book so I can watch you guys play better.
Okay,
we're
losing the thread now of the world card.
I wanted to say, I remembered a comment that I wanted to share a long time ago and forgot. So I think that the Hanged Man card, we were comparing that to the World card earlier and saying that he's not really, someone said he's not really kind of making any effort compared to the World card, was what I got from what you were saying. Like he's more.
What card? I'm sorry.
You were comparing the Hanged Man to the World card and saying that they're, you know, reversed. And I believe I'm paraphrasing, but I believe one of the comments you made is that the Hanged Man compared to the World card is sort of inactive. He's not, something about that. And I just wanted to say that I think it's more about, it's not that he's giving up. Well, in a sense, yes, but it's more like, to me it means acceptance, like acceptance of what you can't change.
It absolutely is an acceptance
with those situations.
Yeah, it absolutely is an acceptance, but you know, it's how can you realize that you are held down by a situation without, you know, really just coming to that realization? Like you can't ever really overthrow something if you can't admit that it has the upper hand on you in the first place. So it is certainly a turning point in the cards, and I would call it a lysis, which means a loosening. You know, it's that point where you realize, like, holy shit, there really are forces that seek to kind of oppress me, maybe.
Yeah.
And
then
it begins to loosen and it begins to come around, and then eventually, you know, after it's made its full round, you're now at this point where you've gotten the upper hand on those forces.
And consequently from the Saturnian, and with your Saturn, I can flip it with one word. I mean, meditation with Hanged Man and contemplation with the world, because there's the inward and then the outward. So that, like you said, you've come up to this place to a point of dominion. So you can contemplate, actively working.
Yeah, and several of my teachers constantly stress the idea that Saturn is probably the most important lesson to learn, because it can simultaneously be the most malevolent force in your life or the most extreme source of discipline in your life. It can be one or the other, and it depends on your relationship to it. So can
you talk more about that, the discipline part?
I think the idea essentially is that, you know, if you have a discipline, you know, it requires extreme limitation. So to put that into my own context, you know, if I want to like sit and do my schoolwork and get a lot of work done and be very powerful with my efforts, it takes an extreme discipline, not looking at my phone, not checking my email, not doing anything, but just being extremely focused in on something. And that discipline can be a great source of power in that sense. But, you know, like that's a discipline that I struggle with. I'm sure we all struggle with. Like to hear me say it, it sounds like I've probably got a level of mastery
Oh
with
no,
it that
I
I
get
do
it.
not. It's very, very
100%.
difficult. So it can simultaneously be either the thing that is like the hardest lesson that you'll never learn, or the lesson that you get early on and is the source of your extreme discipline and power in the world.
No, I appreciate that example because, well, number one, like we have these diagnoses that have to do with issues with attention, right? Modulating attention. However, it's also a very modern existential issue, how we spend our attention, and not just people who are considered neurally atypical like me related to that, but everybody, because we have all this information available to us and because we have technology and all of that. So I just wanted to point that out, Nick, that I think that's, I don't think that's a little thing at all. I think that's everything, really.
Oh, I think it's massive too. And the other thing that I want to point out is just that, you know, if we take a classic musician, for example, somebody like Miles Davis, like we all know Miles Davis's best albums and what he's best known for, you know, completely revolutionizing the approach to the horn and jazz music and all of that stuff. But you know, the thing that people don't see with people like that is his intense and extreme discipline, the hundreds of thousands of hours he spent behind his horn to make the relatively little amount of time of album recordings that we know and love, you know, and that's the type of discipline that I'm talking about. And, you know, he obviously had a handle on what I'm talking about. And that's really what separates the boys from the men, so to speak.
Well, and that whole Saturnian thing with Miles Davis.
Okay, let's move on now.
Okay.
We're not talking about jazz and we're not talking about astrology per se. Let us go back.
Let us come back to the world. Say,
let's come back to the world, please.
Wish you were here. Is you get a picture when you're standing on the moon.
How do we know that tarot isn't about jazz?
Well, it is about jazz, but
let's get back to the world card.
but let's get back to the world card, if you don't mind.
Too funny.
All right, so I'm going to give you Stephen Heller's definition of it here.
Classic
I just want to say we missed a great opportunity to mash two words together in a jazz astrology.
Oh.
Moving on.
Okay.
No, that's not a groaner. That's pretty good.
We're gonna make a band after.
Okay, so here's the
you got to play in thirds.
The 21st Arcanum, sometimes known as the universe. The Arcanum shows a dancer clad only in a scarf framed by an oval wreath. In the four corners are the four beasts of earth, water, fire, and air, the constituents of the manifest world, and the four functional cornerstones of the human personality, namely sensation, feeling, thinking, and intuition. The dancer, who ideally is a hermaphrodite, holds two wands representing the balance of the opposites and of involution and evolution. The legs of the dancer form a cross, while the arms and the torso make up the shape of a triangle pointing upward, indicating the lower quaternary of the personality surmounted by the trinity of the higher self.
There you go, Raquel.
And so, keynote, from imprisonment in form, we rise to the consciousness of vital force. Motto, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, from John 8:32. It's a biblical reference from the King James Version. So, we get out of the imprisonment of the logos and into the eros, right?
But we have to deal with the imprisonment. It's like being in denial over something doesn't help you deal with it, like.
Right. So
Yeah, you need
so the theologians who are still referring to John 1:1 haven't read on to John 8:32, apparently.
Oh,
I am meditation. I am not of this world, but a child of the beyond. My home is afar, and I long for the house of my Father. May I rightly commence the journey of return. I consecrate my physical, emotional, mental, and intuitive faculties to the accomplishment of the great work. May the senses of my body, the feelings of my emotions, the thoughts of my mind, and the insights of my intuition serve the great work. There is no part of me that is not of the gods. I resolve to regard all incidents in my life as a portion of the dialogue between myself and the self, capital S. May every part of my being and every act of my living be dedicated to the purpose of the return to the home of my Father.
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. I've read
This
it.
skip reminds me of something that I read, another book I started and haven't finished but intend to, is Money and the Meaning of Life. I've commented about it, I think, in my first comment on the YouTube before you guys invited me here, that a central theme in it, which is coming up also in this card, and we referred to it before, is that the best training ground for spiritual ideas and values where we test it is in the practical, is out in the world. And he gave the story of some monks, like when people started going into monasteries and stuff, and they would counsel people who were warriors, or part of the military, because they thought, they might die and they wanted to be prepared for that. But also there were a lot of difficult decisions to make. How do you integrate your spiritual convictions when you're dealing with death and the potential to kill other people, kill or be killed type of stuff? And the guy, I don't remember the direct quote. It was said in a very poetic way, but basically the monk said something about how, in a way, they had it easier because they lived in hierarchical. Hope you're here to stay. They lived in relative isolation, and they could focus solely on their, spiritual knowledge. But he was saying, but you have the best playing field, literally out on the battlefield of life, to practice these principles. So I find comfort in that, because it means we don't have to let go of all our earthly attachment to be spiritual and to be of service.
Yeah, and that's
Well,
a
Nick said
major
that earlier.
idea. That's a major idea. I don't know if I did say that, at least not this time. But anyway,
Well, fetch wood, carry water, and then also fetch wood, carry
okay,
water.
right.
I mean, that's
yeah,
in
yeah.
that metaphor.
Yeah, but the thing that comes to mind for me is I guess the thing that I want to say is that's the problem with asceticism, living a life of a monk, turning away from life. It's this idea that you're essentially abandoning life while being alive. And like, I'm not saying it's negative. I'm not looking down on it, but I don't also speak from a place of wanting that for myself, because I think, the only way that we really are defined in the world is by brushing up against one another and living in the world. And it makes me think of, on the Sun card, all those different Bible quotes that I read about essentially the kingdom of heaven being here right now, us being the kingdom of heaven, and we are in the kingdom of heaven if we just realize it here on earth. And I think that's the difference between being a monk and being on some sublimated high place in the mountains and not living a life, and then actually, realizing all of this stuff, realizing the spiritual reality of the world, and still just being a regular person, still just living a regular life. And I think it's the tendency just almost naturally for all spiritual people to kind of go to that place. But Skip, myself, and Jordan, before we talked live last week, we're talking about how Gnosticism is pretty much like they think the material world is like evil. They turn away from the material world. And then I was also saying I'm reading Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And that whole book is essentially on like how to live an earthly life and how to love your body. And he just throughout the books speaks out against, you know, people who teach the virtues of turning away from life and not living a life. And I think that's a magnificent example of these two poles of like, on the one hand, realizing spiritual reality, and on the other, still just being a freaking human being, like still drinking a milkshake or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, in regards to that, I mean, just quickly too, I mean, with the Spake Zarathustra, I have a shamanic psychologist friend. I mean, she's a certified shaman and she's a licensed psychotherapist. And her first thing, and if she says nothing else, is the body comes first, because the vessel can't, you know, she wants to take care of the cracks. So there's that wholeness of the world there where, yes, not Gnosticism. I mean, the body is not to be denied in that way.
A lot of the people who I've known anyway who seek those paths, like I was in contact with a group of nuns. For 2 or 3 years I went to a Buddhist nunnery, which I didn't even know existed. I didn't even know they had Buddhist nuns. I didn't know they used that word. I didn't know anything about that. And it's actually in the Bay Area, and they're a group of American-born white women who have been responsible for bringing Theravada Buddhism and a new kind of cycle of it to the United States. They're fascinating, wonderful people. And anyway, one of them became a nun. I think she's like the most powerful one, or like head, her and this other woman. Anyway, and she became a nun when she was like 15 in the United States. And the other woman, and she's known to be the more kind of mystical. If you ask her a spiritual question, she'll go on this magical joyride where I don't even know what you're saying, but I'm really moved by it. It's so poetic, and like being around her, she just radiates this energy you want to be around. And then the other lady's older and more cerebral. If you ask her a question, she'll refer directly to the Dhammapada, and but both are needed. So it's an example of Eros and Logos. The reason I brought that up actually was because I was trying to say that the older one, especially, like when I was getting sober, I was like really brown baby new sober, like a couple months or something. And I was so moved that I was thinking, do I want to like live this life? Like, because I had a lot of spiritual experiences and crying and oh my gosh. And she said, the one lady was like, well, I had to get sober first before I could, she's referring to herself. So she was saying you should go through your program and then make that decision. But I think the point is when she said that, it humanized her for me, because it was like, oh, she lived a whole life. She had a life partner. She went through school. She did. And then in her, senior years, she realized she wanted to do this. So all of those experiences she had outside of formal religion fed into her being able to provide wise counsel to someone like me, than maybe compared to the other lady who was really cool to listen to, but she hadn't lived all the experiences I had lived because she became a nun younger.
Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to some explanations of the world and get out of Theravada Buddhism.
Let's do it.
I thought it was connected, though. I mean,
it is connected. I'm not saying it's not connected. I just
at the edge of chaos.
So let's click the gear and hit the gas next.
For average, the average viewer on here sticks with us for 10 minutes. And so every 10 minutes, I have to introduce the basic thing that we're talking about, so that if somebody comes on right now, they're going to know what we're talking about during their 10 minutes.
Skip, could I say something to in my attempt to take us back into that?
All right.
Okay, so there was one passage that I didn't read that I as a kind of speaks to what everybody said in their introduction piece about the card, and relating to it being the end. It's the final card in the tarot sequence, but it's an egg, so it's also the beginning. So Revelation 22:13, I am the Aleph, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. And if that were in Hebrew, it would be I am the Aleph and the Tav, because there's no O in Hebrew, so it wouldn't be an Omega but a Tav. But I say that because it has for me everything to do with beginnings and ends.
Yep, and the Battle Hymn of the Republic comes right out of that
Right.
last passage of Revelation. Okay. So mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, right? So so I'm going to read Ouspensky for a minute, okay, which is the New Model of the Universe from 1931.
I'm so amazed to find out that he's written about the tarot. When I was like, I don't know, 20, I was walking down the street in Boone, and a friend of mine was about to sell everything that he owned and like just go travel around. And he was selling all of his books on the sidewalk, and I stopped and just thumbed through his books and picked up a Ouspensky book called In Search of the Miraculous, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great book, but I never would have thought that guy would be writing about the tarot. And
Yeah, well, he's good about the visioning here, so that's what I particularly like about it. So here's what he says about the world. It's very short. An unexpected vision rose before me. A circle resembling a wreath woven from rainbows and lightning revolved between sky and earth. It revolved with frenzied speed, blinding me with its brilliance, and in this radiance and fire music sounded, and soft singing was heard, and also the peals of thunder and the roar of a hurricane, and the noise of mountain avalanches, and the rumble of earthquakes. The circle whirled with a terrible noise, touching earth and sky, and in its center I saw the dancing figure of a young and beautiful woman, wrapped in a light transparent scarf with a magic wand in her hand. And at the sides of the circle there became visible to me the four beasts of the apocalypse, one like a lion, second like a calf, the third like the face of a man, and the fourth like a flying eagle. The vision disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. A strange stillness descended on the earth. What does this mean? I asked in astonishment. It is the image of the world, said the voice. It must be understood before one can pass through the gates of the temple. This is the world in the circle of time, amid the four principles. This is what you always see but never understand. Understand that all that you see, things and phenomena, are but the hieroglyphs of higher ideas. Okay, that's
beautifully written.
That's good. That last part.
Right. And so let me also read from Jodorowsky, If the World Spoke.
has anybody watched his movie yet?
Jodorowsky's movie?
Yeah.
No.
Holy Mountain. I'm telling you guys, it will absolutely blow your mind. And there's tarot symbolism all throughout the movie.
Which one?
Note in my notebook about it. But
The Holy Mountain.
The Holy Mountain.
Yeah, I mean, prepare to be disturbed, but it disturbed in a way that's good, I guess.
He's very Iranian. I mean, he'll get you moving because he'll put your parts pulled apart.
Yeah, I watched the movie before I really got it, and I was absolutely floored. I actually turned it off the first time that I watched it. I watched it one night late after work, and I was like, "What is this shit?" And then I watched it another time, and I got 3/4 of the way through it. Then I watched it again, and I was like, now I get it. Okay.
It's hard to drive a Formula One car the first time you get in it.
Yeah.
You usually put it in the wall.
it's like Yeah, I had a reaction to a music album like that I hated. I was like, this doesn't even sound like music. And then years later, I found it and I thought it was so beautiful. It showed me that I changed. Same thing with you.
Yeah,
It showed
yeah,
that
I
you
love
changed,
that.
didn't
I
change.
really, really love that. I feel the same way about like Radiohead. I had to get to a point in my life to where I could appreciate them.
I've always
Well, and
loved
also
Radiohead,
too,
but it's okay, Nick. I felt that way about Tori Amos.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It used to annoy the crap out of me.
what's a funny counterpoint to that is not only not growth, but trauma. Sometimes beauty T-bones you and you're just startled because you're so moved, but you're
However,
startled like getting hit in the car from the side of the note. And there are times when I've said, why am I reacting so strongly? And I stop and I back up and I'm like, oh, because this is beautiful. But it actually made me angry. Like, but the thing is fear-based because I got startled.
yeah,
But I laughed that sometimes beauty will piss you off. But
that is so true. Like,
but it's when it's beauty you've never seen. And so at that point, when
yeah,
you turn in, you expand. And
it's
that's when I find you
taboo.
learn something.
It's taboo, or we're not used to seeing something as beautiful, and so people initially reject it and think it's horrible, and then
Right.
it becomes fetishized,
Okay.
and then it becomes
All right, Skip,
If-
lay it
if-
on
What's your
us.
next one, Skip?
If the World Spoke by Alejandro Jodorowsky.
I love his cards.
From The Way of Tarot. Okay. If the world spoke, I am there before you, all around you, and inside you with feelings of immense pleasure. I am a complete being. There is nothing inside me that resists me. Everything is in complete unity. Everything is in its place. I am an invulnerable consciousness. I am the perpetual dance of totality. The one who does not know me says no when the entire universe is saying yes. And this negation of my vast acquiescence leads this individual to impotence. But the one who becomes entirely pure and concave, who allows me entrance, will begin to dance with me and to say what I say. This individual experiences universal love, complete thought, cosmic desire, and inconceivable life force. If you reach me, which is to say, if you develop me within yourself, you shall taste the supreme happiness that is the happiness of living. To achieve this, you must dissolve within the ardent jewel of my presence. Like four rivers returning to their single source, leave behind the blind swarm of bees that are your concepts to melt within my bliss. Leave behind the herd of your feelings to drown within my infinite exaltation. Offer me the demented mob of your desires, so they might enrich, like an exquisite delicacy, my constant creativity. And may all your physical matter, with all its inescapable needs, surrender to this transparency that animates me. You shall then be master of your world. Inside, your libido will no longer be in revolt. Your desires will cease to drown you. Your thoughts will not destroy you, and your body will pose no obstacle to your life. You will be full and united to me in dance, joy, and immeasurable celebration. Through obedience, I permit through obedience, I permit your intellect to learn how to be. Through absolute peace, I teach your heart how to love. Through learning reception, I teach your sex how to create. And through acceptance of death, I teach your body how to live. If, like a famished and thirsty lion, you abandon the prey to raise yourself to the soul, you shall finally find me. I am the taste of living and realization. I am the ephemeral flower always being born of the abyss. I represent the materialization of all dreams, the soul without which the world is not the world, but a sterile desert. the end of hope. I am the purpose of every path, ineffable joy. Like a holy virgin, I carry the deity inside my womb. I am the concrete expression right here of the sacred energy of the Fool. I am the world created by God so that he could love it. Okay. So I think I should show a few images here because
I like when you include his tarot voices, because the speaking of the tarot cards is, he's just so well done with him.
yeah, he really gets it. Okay, so I give you the she-wolf and the starman because they are evergreen favorites. Okay.
Our staples.
Our staples. Okay. So here's she-wolf.
Oh, cool. That reminds me of the Nirvana album.
Look at the
Like, I
four
know-
worlds.
I know that referenced something else. I know that these images came before that album. What's that album?
In utero.
Yes.
Okay, she-wolf, the world, cosmic union. Okay, she calls it. All right. Cosmic union, the world, Saturn. Keys, completion and beginning of a cycle. Artwork illumination. A winged woman presents the tree of life on her right and an Egyptian ankh on her left. The tree of life signifies the various stages and steps on the archetypal journey. In all, there are 22 of these, and all 22 cards in the major arcana. Each stage, each archetype is important for self-understanding and progress toward the completion of any cycle. One may argue that it is impossible to complete any cycle without having undergone these steps. The Ankh signifies eternal life, the cycle of birth and death. This rounded top, the rounded top represents the sky goddess Nut or Nut. The horizontal cross, her husband, Geb, the god of earth. And the stem represents the underworld, called Duat. The woman stands almost as if in a hallway, pillars of tall crystals around her. These walls may be a gateway or an endless passage, depending on where we are in our process. The Saturnian energy is strong here, but the tests have been completed or are near completion. So there is a sense of release and freedom, as is symbolized by the wings. Okay, cool. Light. We have reached, or soon will reach, the completion of a karmic cycle. Much has been tested and much has been learned. As we ascend to new levels of consciousness, more gifts of wisdom and understanding are accessible to us, and thus we become more unified with the cosmos. These gifts are accessible through the work because we have simplified ourselves to allow access for wisdom. Wisdom is not a complex thing. Often the simplest answer is the correct one, and we only need to quiet ourselves to know it. Wisdom is also often universal. Our notion of separation and otherness becomes insignificant. The lessons we have learned will provide much needed fortitude and flexibility for the next cycle, which will soon be started if it has not already. This is a wonderful time to rest and to take in the multitudinous information we have been presented with, while also feeling accomplished and confident in our progress. Shadow, or reversed, I suppose, the more porous aspect of this card is that we may believe we have come to completion when we really have not. We may feel like we've dealt with something fully, when in reality there is still much more to be done. We should not undermine the efforts we have already put forth, but should seek to be honest with ourselves about where we really are. If there are things yet to do, take the mindful time to do them properly so that true cosmic union can be achieved. Mantra, as above, so below, as within, so without. Okay.
That's really well done there. And I would say the two things that jump out to me are the wolf. The first thing I saw was the wolf way back in the back on the left, and then her standing with a foot on both sides, literally, one on the gold, one in outer space.
Okay.
Which is very world.
That was by Devani Wolf. Go ahead and
yeah, okay, hold on, let me pause so I can what this reminds me of, if I may, and I think it is connected to the meaning of the card, but I'm using something else as an example, if that's okay. Is a woman's menstrual cycle. And I was like Googling it to also make sure that I was explaining myself correctly, because even though, I'm a woman, like, it's kind of, anyway, I used to think that there's a period of time where women, actually bleed, which lasts, depending on the woman, 3 to 8 days. It could be 5 days on average, but it's always going on. The cycle is always happening. And then I just came to understand that later. Just because you only see the results of it for a period of time, you're, ovulating and your hormone levels are changing when you're not showing that external evidence. And so the cycle is actually 28 days long. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a unabashedly feminine representation here. There's also the moon, and our cycles can go with the moon. And it's an example. This is also the first time I remember seeing an act like the actual anatomical vagina, not just being, external part, but not just being referred to or kind of covered up or hinted at. It's like we actually see her like vulva and everything. And so I think that's significant because a woman's menstrual cycle is similar to what they're talking about, where you're kind of never really done with it, I guess. I don't know. I didn't mean that last part. That's more of a metaphor, that last part. But, like even when women lose their menstruation, that's a whole new change in a cycle that they experience is like disruptive to their body. So I think that's a metaphor for our psychological individuation in some way.
Sure, we're all going through transformation all the time. Maybe women are more conscious of it than men are. So let's move on to the Starman, because this is a pretty awesome image also.
Very.
And I love that they've calmed down on this one. I mean, for relative to the other cards, it's still pretty there, but this card feels very Saturn. Like they went, all right, we'll settle down. And they just nailed it.
All right.
Calm down?
It doesn't seem calm to me.
Based on the scriptural scholarship of the previous images, I would say that this one is one of the more calm. It's not so explosively astral.
In this particular deck.
You mean
yeah, right. In this, just relative to this deck. No, not in general.
Right. So in a reading, the world, an auspicious period, you have achieved success in your endeavor. Walk in harmony with Mother Earth, gather your tribe, and give your best. Reversed, fleeting success, you have more to do. Feeling disconnected from the world, reconnect to nature and its life-giving energies. Okay, so that's what our insurrectionists were doing last Wednesday. They were reconnecting with nature and finding out what life-giving energies it might give.
And nature will kill you above tree line.
Some of them, yep. Okay.
Typewriter in this one. There's a typewriter.
Yeah,
I'm gonna read here. Maybe we'll find it.
Maybe it's a Remington. We'll see with the way
I used to
read.
type on a typewriter like that for years.
Very
Okay.
satisfying.
Universe, I am your beloved conduit for the radiance and grace of life. We meet the piercing gaze of the earth shamanka warrioress, standing resolute, fully present. She rises out of the ground, embodying the immense force of Mother Nature. A wise, ancient being, the magic of alchemy and sacred earth mystery are woven into her crafted armor, worn with powerful elegance. Around her is the skeleton of industry, a former factory, now transformed by nature into some great cathedral or temple. The world is her church. The twisted branches reaching into the space represent the ancient bristlecone pines, the oldest non-clonal organisms on this planet. Recent research in forests suggests the biggest and therefore oldest of the trees, now known as mother trees, have vast mycorrhizal networks of fungi below ground and that support young trees or seedlings, preferentially ferrying them the nutrients that they need to grow. The ancient mother tree is a recurrent theme or motif of the Starman Tarot, delivering the energy of the miraculous tree, ancient, rooted in the wild earth, having lived through so many epochs, an ever-present witness to the stream of life that has come and gone. It reminds us to respect and honor nature that is so formidably strong, for her presence will prevail no matter what we think and say about saving the planet. Mother Nature always decides and stands as the shamanka, unapologetic, displaying her defenses. Although considerably advanced in years, she remains vital and potent, provocatively sensual and fecund. She exhibits her fertility with handfuls of grain and the cocoa pods laid out before her, sacred food of the gods that originated in South America many thousands of years ago. They are some of the most complex and nutritiously dense foods in existence. She gifts us her abundance freely and offers us one of the greatest treasures of all, the royal metal, the gold ingot, fashioned into astonishing artifacts for millennia. Gold was, above all, sacred to the sun deities, kept in trust by the priesthood, and used in ceremony and ritual to maintain the balance and harmony of nature. In return, there is an offering of the sacred medicine plant, tobacco, whose smoke carries all the thoughts, feelings, and prayers to Mother Earth Shamanka and the creator of the world. The world is highly auspicious and invites success in any endeavor if you walk the path of integrity and offer your work and projects in service of humanity and the earth. You are finally mastering life and are literally taking the world by storm. As a clear vessel and channel, unfazed by the tumultuous changes and cycles of life, you tenderly and expertly balance these compelling and natural energies. Earth, water, fire, air. The elementals are experienced as marvelous instruments that can be played together to make exquisite music and harmony, which resounds through the universe. It is time to gather your tribe and be a force for good. Reversed, deserved success is short-lived, tainted for there is much to do and a bigger mountain to climb. There is a disconnect from the world and the life-giving and sustaining force of nature. So,
Wow.
wow.
That is so timely with what's going on about, assemble your forces for
Yeah.
good.
And this reminds me, one time I was in Goa, which is a former Portuguese colony in India. And in this very small area of about 4 square miles, they have 16 churches. And only 2 of them are still operating. One is a cathedral, and the other is a Protestant church. All the rest of them are totally overgrown, like that image that we were just looking at.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like a visit to the planet of the apes, something like that.
Almost like a Piranesi print. Nature's grown back in and just taken completely.
I mean, it's really a bizarre experience to go there, I have to tell you.
There was, if I'm not mistaken, there's a wonderful analogy there to the way that mushrooms grow, and the symbiosis that takes place between mushrooms and the trees that they grow off of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys, but I love mushrooms. I hunt mushrooms all around my house when it's in season, and I'm able to find a bunch of edible mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms and stuff like that. But the thing that's really interesting is that, like, if you know what kind of trees they grow around, you can almost always find them because they have this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's essentially like a network that grows out from under the roots of the tree and then supports nutrients and gives rise to the certain kind of mushrooms that grow in relation to that certain kind of tree.
Yep.
And it's really cool. It makes me think back to that image that I was showing of the woman with the world as her torso nursing the child. And it's like that same exact relationship is mirrored between the tree and this hidden network that connects the mushroom and the tree.
Yeah. Well, the message obviously here is, remember Mother Nature.
That's cool. You're a mycologist. I mean, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not. I just.
Well, you know
just
which
like
ones
mushrooms.
don't.
It's just
probably
weird,
you know which ones
George.
will
It's
kill
just-
you, and don't eat those.
Yeah.
Into a lot of
Oh,
different things, like all of us here. Just
Okay, very quickly, I just want to show a few more cards.
The message was also eat more chocolate,
Yes.
Yes.
eat mushrooms and chocolate.
very clearly.
Right. Okay,
God
so
will.
just very quickly, I just want to
I'm glad you
show
said that, Annabelle.
some difference in cards. So here is the Mythic Tarot, and obviously this is really consciously made it
One body.
yeah, one body, two heads, and one, and
It's the hermaphrodite. Is
Hermaphrodite.
a daughter of Hermes and Aphrodite in the
Really?
Right,
Greek
right.
mythology.
Hermes and Aphrodite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And of course the
they had a
Ouroboros here.
Yeah.
I'm surprised nobody mentioned that already with all the talk of beginning and end and all of that.
Yep. Okay, and this is the Jungian Tarot here. This is the Line Strider deck, and
So
of
pretty.
course this is the Deviant Moon deck here, where she becomes kind of a mermaid, and so is hermaphroditic in the sense that she doesn't have any sex.
Well, and also
Yes, fish genitalia.
she's like the crab in the which card? No, the moon. She's basically a centaur for the ocean, the divine and the beast. So she can live between both worlds, underwater and above water.
Right.
So
And
in the underworld
and so,
in here.
and so a lot of these figures, like here is a fish that is people in the faces, and the Ouroboros here, and
there's
and the creatures becoming humanish, sort of down below. Okay.
The two faces in the Mythic Tarot card, they're actually pissed at each other. If you look really closely,
Oh, they're angry. Yeah,
they're
yes.
both fighting.
Can you?
That's a very important mention. it's an important message of this card because it's the integration of opposites. So the opposites stay inside that egg shape Ouroboros, but fighting, they don't like each other.
Can you
Okay.
maximize it, Jeff?
Yep. So we have to go and look at this at the Mythic Tarot here.
That's a really good point, Raquel, too, with the tension and the egg, too, because if it is opened or broken from outside, life dies, life stops.
Mhm.
If it is broken from within, life begins. So that tension of that's really an important piece inside that egg.
I think also, just to add to what Jerome was saying earlier, and also what we're talking about now, he pointed out that the deity that I had in my slide was also Fanes. But if and that is true, it's my understanding that they're the Ion and Fanes are the same deity. But the reason that I bring this up is because Fanes belongs to a certain brand of Greek mythology called Orphism, where they believed that pretty much all of the deities that went down into hell and then came back out were actually the real gods that they worshipped. So gods like Persephone, Orpheus,
right?
I think Dionysus was held in high regard. But anyways, the whole idea is that Fanes is born from the Orphic egg. So in all of these, we see the shape of the egg. So Fanes, in my image in particular, is born from this egg in which he's encased. And then in all of these cards, there's an egg-like shape.
Okay, so I have a question for the group for afterward, which is, how should I be wearing my Christmas present, which is my Ouroboros?
Very important question.
Very important, because I'm wearing it so that if I hold my arm out, it looks like it's counterclockwise, but this is showing it clockwise. But just hold that question. Let's cover Liz Green, what she says. Okay, so the card of the world portrays a golden serpent coiled in the shape of an egg, eating its own tail. Within its circumference, a strange figure dances, half male and half female, wearing a gold crown on its female head and a wreath of laurel leaves on its male head. It is holding in each hand a golden staff. Around the egg shape of the serpent can be seen, rising from the clouds, a cup, a sword, a flaming wand, and a golden pentacle. The golden staffs are connected with the magic wand of Hermes, for the reborn personality can create more potently in the realms of feeling, imagination, mind, and matter. The four symbols which preside over the realms of water, fire, air, and earth reflect the potentials which await development in the new personality. And the world snake, called Ouroboros in Greek, was said to be itself both male and female, self-impregnating, self-feeding, immortal, and complete. Thus, it is the mythic image for both God and nature, here embodied in one symbol. Okay, and then what she says here, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but here we meet Hermaphroditus, who in myth was the child of Hermes and Aphrodite. In one version of the tale, Hermaphroditus was born a double-sex being, but in another version, the duality or unity was made rather than born. Hermaphroditus was originally a male child, and to conceal his illicit birth, Aphrodite immediately confided him to the nymphs of Mount Ida, who brought him up in the forests. At the age of 15, he was a wild and savage youth whose chief pleasure was to hunt in the wooded mountains. One day, he arrived at the banks of a limpid lake, whose freshness tempted him to bathe. The nymph Salmachus, who ruled the lake, saw him and was enamored of his beauty. She told him so, and in vain the shy youth attempted to repulse her. Salmachus threw her arms around him and covered him with kisses. He continued to resist, and the nymph cried out, "O gods, grant that nothing may ever separate him from me, or me from him." Immediately their two bodies were united and became as one. The four devices that surround the image of Hermaphroditus in the card of the world belong to the four deities: Aphrodite, the love goddess; Zeus, the king of the gods; Athene, the goddess of wisdom; and Poseidon, the god of earthquakes. We have already encountered these symbols in the card of the magician: the cup of love, the wand of creative imagination, the sword of the intellect, and the pinnacle of physical reality. We will meet these four objects again when we explore the four suits of the minor arcana. The serpent which surrounds Hermaphroditus is the ancient world snake, which, as we have seen, embodies the raw, instinctual power of life itself, forever devouring and recreating itself. Okay. I'm going to leave it at that from those.
Well, in the minor arcana of the mythological tarot, Poseidon is actually related to the pentacle suit and not the cups. The cups are Aphrodite's, Athena's is swords, and Zeus is the wand. So, and Poseidon doesn't actually show in the entire pentacle suit. So he's kind of like this hidden actor in the
gray
suits.
eminence. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Oh, and
That's cool. I didn't know that.
The story of the pentacle suits, actually, they appear in the Tower card in the mythological tarot.
Say
Can you
that
tell
again.
us-
Tell us more, Rico.
I said that
Sorry, there's nothing to
Poseidon
repeat.
actually.
Sorry, that was my cell phone talking. Go ahead.
Tell us more.
Siri,
And
just
she
shut
said,
me
"Sorry,
off."
there's nothing to repeat." That was priceless.
I said that
Oh.
actually the actors of the suit, the pentacle suit, they appeared in the Tower card. So this is why Poseidon actually, because Poseidon is the main character of the Tower card in the mythological tarot. So, but again, if you don't really know the whole story of that deck, you won't realize that the Tower card is actually linked to the Pentacle suit, as well as the Pentacle suit is linked to Poseidon, because Poseidon is actually the god of water, of oceans, so it's not actually about earth and material things.
Okay, so I have this practical question. My wife gave me the Ouroboros for Christmas, and can you see it? Okay.
Clarifying before you do, are you mirrored? Is that on your right hand?
It is on my right hand. Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if the camera was flipping you. Okay.
All right, just a minute here. I'm going to stop my background so that you can see it properly. Okay, so here's the thing, and so if I'm showing it to you,
Gorgeous.
It really is.
No, if I'm showing it to you like that, it's actually counterclockwise, not clockwise.
From your point of view, you mean?
Yeah,
No,
and it's pointing to your right.
This is my right arm, although in this
Yeah.
picture it looks like my left arm, but it's actually my right arm. Okay.
No, I get.
So it's your left arm?
No, this is my
No,
right
I'm
arm.
just joshing.
Right. Okay. So the question is, should I be wearing it this way or so it shows this way?
Well, what do you?
I
How do
think it's
you
more
prefer?
important in which arm you're using.
This is on my right arm. This is
Because the
first
right
time.
arm, if it is like, no, if it is in your handwriting hand,
Yes.
so it's the active side of yourself. So you're empowering your active side. But in the left hand is the receiving side.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
so
what's
And
this?
it's more of a healing side as well, the left side. If you write with your right hand,
Right.
it's
And
reversed
actually,
from-
I went
So
through
wait
this
a
with
minute,
a
I want to
watch.
understand the point. So Raquel, so the point is what? That I should be wearing it on my left hand?
Mm-hmm.
wear it on the
it
side.
depends of what you want. If you want to be more active and I think be guarded inside of your actions, you will use in your right hand. But if you want to heal something and be more receptive of other people's feelings and thoughts, and so you use it in your left hand.
Okay, well, here's an interesting factoid. I do wear my watch on my left hand so that I don't have room for both. But whenever I hold a telephone to my ear, I always hold it to my left side.
Yeah.
It's just a practice that I followed for 30 years. Because I want it to go to my creative side. I want the conversation to go through my creative side first. I mean, obviously you get the logos also, but
Well, that makes sense too, to take notes with the right hand then, and also so there's zero interference no matter you're receiving clearly, and you're also outputting with a pen or typing if you have to take notes.
They
Yeah.
say it's actually good to, like in certain writing exercises and stuff, you use whatever the opposite of your dominant hand is, because it'll still help open up a part of your mind. Like I'm left-handed, but when I do exercises, like I'm technically ambidextrous, but I write with my left hand.
mm-hmm.
So when I write with my right hand, it's still opening up a part of my brain that, according to handedness, they think is less dominant, but it's not a binary thing.
Yeah, well, I do it so that I can open up.
I would suggest then to switch your watch to that hand and switch that to that hand, because I used to always wear my watch on my left hand because it got in the way when I'm drawing, and also I can look at it while I'm still drawing, like this kind of thing. But I was too aware of it on my right hand, and I would forget about it on my left hand, and it felt like in that sense it was more of an ally, like it was separate in a way, instead of always right there up here in the face. So I would think about entertaining switching. Then my question would be, does it go counterclockwise or clockwise on the other hand? I mean, how do you turn it?
These
I
are
would
like
suggest-
big questions right now.
Yeah, I would suggest that you guys are all hippies and it doesn't matter.
Get out, Nick.
Tell that to my watches.
So why are you here?
Backwards
Why are you
and
here in the
broke.
tarot class? Yeah,
All
no,
hippies.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that deeply about things like that, Skip, because that's a lot. What I
It's the
want
little
to know,
things sometimes.
but my question is, when you look at it, do you feel like you're looking at it from your point of view? Do you see what I'm saying?
From my point of view, it looks like it's going clockwise.
And is that nice for you?
Yeah,
Well,
if it's going clockwise, time eats itself. So there you go. I think that
Well,
works.
it's going forward. It's going to the
My
right.
answer to your
it's
question is, I think that you should go. First of all, it is an Ouroboros, so it's continual anyway.
Right.
Is the real answer. That being said, I think that you should wear it in the way that is most pleasing to you, because if you take care of yourself, it'll radiate out into the world and also help others. You don't have to like spoon feed people how they're supposed to see it. That's what I would say.
Okay, very good. Annabelle, do you want to opine on this issue?
No, not at all.
Okay. Okay.
Oh.
All right. So very quickly here, I want to show a few more cards because in the end, you want to see the Manara card because it's just priceless, and hopefully the censors won't see it.
I forget which is the world.
Okay, so here's this is the Splendor Solus
That
card.
one does not look happy.
This is
We should all hold up our IDs so it's all kosher.
This is the Tsar's Tarot. This is the Fifth Tarot, and this is the Hermetic Tarot for those four. Okay, and I'm not going to give them more time because it's late and I'm tired because I have a bum hip that caused me to be awake late last night. Okay,
Thanks for showing up.
yeah.
anyway.
Okay, so here's this is the Thoth Tarot here, the universe. Very, very interesting. This is the Golden Dawn. Now, does anybody know, Nick, do you know, or anybody, why the four apostles, out of the four apostles, three of them became animals and only one of them has a head?
Yeah, because the vision of Ezekiel, that's also what he sees on the four cherubim. They each have four heads, and these are the animals, and there's also the head of an angel. And so it's not necessarily that this is even a human, it's technically an angel.
I see. It's an angel, and so all of the apostles have the four attributes. Is that what you're saying?
I honestly don't know. I can't say much about the apostles with too much authority, but I know that this symbolism does derive from the vision of Ezekiel.
Yes,
Looking up and seeing the four cherubim, each with four faces, one of each of these animals, one of the three animals, and then one of the angel, its own face. So I think the four apostles eventually took on that symbolism as going out and evangelizing the world.
I see. Okay, so I knew it was Ezekiel, but all right.
Well, it's also got to do with, like, I was saying in the slides that I presented, there's a connection between the Wheel of Fortune. Obviously, that symbolism is based on the vision of Ezekiel, and it has those same four characters. And then in this card, it shows up again. I also just want to say that Golden Dawn Tarot deck, the top right one that we're discussing, is definitely my favorite card of that whole deck. That deck was very, like, I don't know, underwhelming, I guess would be the term, like the symbolism, and it was just, it's nice, but I think Robert Wang in his book writes that Israel Regardie gave him those sketches, and that Regardie was thinking they would be just that, they would just be sketches, and then Robert Wang would take the cards and, like, really put his own artistry into the cards and really develop the symbolism. But instead, he just took the sketches that Regardie gave him and colored them. And when he showed them to Regardie later in his life, after he actually had the deck made, he was so disappointed.
Well, I find this deck kind of disappointing.
Yeah, underwhelming is the word. I mean,
whereas the Thoth deck is overwhelming.
Well, right. Even the Thoth deck, one thing important to note there is that the Lenisket, the figure eight, the infinity sign, is differentiated. It's the human then on half of it, and then the serpent on the other half.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very quickly here. What are the last ones? There's a couple more.
You're looking at the Manara now?
You want the Manara now? No, you're not.
Well, wait, not maybe it should be at the very, very end.
Yeah, it's going to be.
13ers are in,
It's going to be. So this is Melissa Townsend's two decks here on top.
I like it.
And on the bottom is the Tarot of the Divine and the Sasarai Bito Tarot. And boy, she's got herself a Ouroboros there.
Hey, can you read the fairy tale that corresponds with the world, or summarize it for us? on the bottom left.
Yeah, I have it here.
If you don't want to, you don't
No,
have to.
no, I have it here. I have it.
You're right, Skip. That's kind of like an anaconda Ouroboros.
Yeah, but
What a great movie.
Actually, it was.
All right, so but Samantha,
I like this kind of
Samantha
movies.
wants the Tarot of the Divine, right? You want this one,
Yep.
right? Okay, so I'll read you this. I happen to have it here. Okay, the legend of Hinamoa and Tutanekai from New Zealand. It's a Maori legend. A long time ago, there was a great chief who lived at Ohata on the shore of Lake Rotorua in New Zealand. He had a beautiful daughter named Hinamoa, whom many young men wished to marry, but she had eyes only for the handsome Tutanekai. Tutanekai was also enamored with Hinamoa, but he knew that though he was of good birth, his rank was too low for Hinamoa's father to ever accept him as a suitor. He was not even a tohunga, a skilled practitioner of magic, someone able to make the kauai flowers spontaneously bloom to win himself the admiration of his lover. So he watched her from afar. And because he lived far out in the middle of the lake on Makauai Island, he saw her very infrequently. Finally, Tutanekai confessed his feelings to Hinamoa and she to him, and they agreed to be married despite the chief's disfavor. They agreed to the best thing to do would be for Hinamoa to steal a canoe in the dead of night and row to Tutanekai. Tutanekai, for his part, would play his flute to guide her and let her know the coast was clear. For several nights, Tutanekai played his flute, but Hinamoa never came. The chief had suspected Hinamoa's intentions and ordered the canoes to be pulled up far out of the water each night. Growing desperate, Hinamoa finally came up with an idea. She would tie hollow gourds to her clothing to keep her afloat and swim across the lake. Hinamoa swam through the night, resting on the floating gourds when she grew tired, following the sound of Tutanekai's flute. When she lost her way, exhausted, she finally made it to shore and revived herself in a warm pool of water. She teased and lured Tutanekai to her side, and they were married right away. The next morning, everyone discovered Hinamoa and Tutanekai had been married. The chief accepted and blessed the couple, and the pair lived happily ever after. So isn't that sweet?
Good. That could have gone another way. I was afraid. I was like, oh God. And then she drowns and then trees grow on the banks or something like that. But I guess he took her seriously. Yeah, well, it's always something like that, right? But I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, she washes up on the shore and she dissolves into two seeds. Her fallopian tubes grow 2 olive trees, and
about how love is tragic. No, but I like that one because I guess she did so much that I guess the father was moved enough to be like, whoa, she must really love that guy.
Okay, now are you ready? Are you ready for the Manara card?
Can one ever be ready for?
No.
Before we move away from those Melissa Townsend cards,
yes,
I just have an idea that I want to share with you guys. I've mentioned it before, and it's kind of a weird dream that I have, but I would really love to see it happen. Maybe within this group, since we all have a mutual love for tarot. But I've always kind of imagined teaching a tarot class, and saying to everyone, here's the meaning of the card, and here's the title of the card, but not showing people the image, and just asking people to go home with all of that in mind and draw what they think the image would be and come back. And I really think that that would be an interesting exercise for everyone. I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can make that happen within this group. I guess the opportunity is probably passed since this is the last card of the major arcana. But I just think that that's really interesting, and I feel some of that coming from Melissa's cards because obviously she, took the cards and ran with them, and she, it's. I guess I should say, they're very personal, and they have her mark. But I really admire her looking at it and saying, I could do my own tarot deck, and I have something to offer.
Yeah, well, Melissa's a Phi Beta Kappa from Brown University, so she knows what she's about in art.
I think that's a really cool idea. It's very creative.
It is a good idea. I like the idea.
It combines the idea of what you're doing in the from what I understand, the participation mystique class with tarot. So
yeah, well, and it's what was I going to say?
Well, if any of you guys steal that idea, I'm going to hunt you down. So.
Well, no, we're not
already,
but it's a good idea, Nick, and it takes the Bota deck a step further because the Bota deck gives you the drawings, but
and personally, I spent 3 years forgetting all tarot meanings and then came back to do that. So it's a wonderful exercise.
Oh,
doing your own tarot deck, whether you're publishing it or not, will teach you the cards in a way that there's no forgetting. You're swimming in them.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Before
that's a great idea.
You wanted to say, right?
Say it again.
Was there? You had started a thought, and then we all.
Well, I was wrapping up with the Manara deck, but I realized that we forgot Jordan's deck. So let's give Jordan max 2 minutes. Jordan.
I'm just going to read the last paragraph, the DNA snippet of the card. As the card comes up, when Skip gets it, the perspective here is you are inside an obelisk, and you are looking up. Mm-hmm. This view through the looking glass at the top of our obelisk has special meaning for Mysterium's royal court. They see the top of the obelisk as a looking glass to see the infinite world of your inner next cycle, as well outer. They also see the top of our obelisk as a powerful portal between worlds. You see, they feel it is also a connection to the afterlife that they use regularly each time they finish their large works. They call the top of the obelisk the portal of the seamless segue. They say that in each joyful completion of a cycle, it gives you a glimpse of eternity. We are in an obelisk. I once heard the 4 royal courts say, though, pyramids are themselves their own foundation. They are set on the sands of time. I felt that as I created and made the top of our obelisk its own foundation as a portal on top of its structure.
Right. So think of being inside the Washington Monument. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. And looking up.
What's the green stuff? It kind of looks to me like barley or hops or something. Okay.
It's like a laurel.
Okay, and the 4 symbols
are Leo, which is fire, Scorpio, which is water, Aquarius, the squigglies, air, and then Taurus, which is earth. You have the hand on the top left of the High Priestess, or strength, and then on the other side, the hand of the High Priestess, or strength, the opposite. So you have a dark one and a light one that are coming as cameos from the rest of the deck. Then you have the dark foot at the bottom and the light foot that come from a minor arcana card as well to cameo and bring in as above and so below, both at the hand level and at the foot level. Instead of the circle, I went ahead and twisted it to differentiate it. That way, you had the infinity symbol as a circle, which makes a higher circle at the top, small, higher self, and then the larger portion of the infinity symbol focused around the inside of that obelisk.
Skip, there's one idea that he kind of brought up that I think is relevant to your question about the animals. And it doesn't exactly relate to the Vision of Ezekiel, Wheel of Fortune card, and the World card. But those 4 signs, like there are 12 signs in the zodiac. They make a wheel. So each of the 4 of the quadrants are broken up into 3 different expressions. There's a cardinal sign, a fixed sign, and a mutable sign. So all of the fixed signs, as you go around, there's like Leo, which is fixed fixed fire. There's Taurus, which is fixed earth. There is Aquarius, which is fixed air. And then there's Scorpio, which is fixed water. So the cardinal is like the ethical, like concerned with like the principles of that sign. And then the fixed is just like, I am what I am and I'll never change. And then the mutable is like a changeable kind of fluid expression of the sign. So each card has those animals around the outside, and I think it's also an expression of the fixed signs of the zodiac.
I think that's a really wonderful point, because it brings up kind of an astrological safecracker, because all 4 of them turn to align to become fixed. It's solid.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point, because it's almost like a 4-number combination lock. And at that point, it becomes what it is.
Yeah.
I think the word safecracker is just a funny word, just so you know. So I wasn't laughing at you.
Should I use graham cracker or cracker jack?
That's cute.
Yeah. All right. Is everybody ready? Now,
okay.
Hide your eyes and just beat now. This angel in this particular card is definitely got the world under control. There she is.
Ride
the lightning.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's. I hope nobody on YouTube blinked, because that's it. You're gonna have to go back.
That's taken at Gillies in Houston. I think that's a mechanical world. It's not the real world.
Should we talk about the symbolism or?
What symbolism of the Monarch card?
The heart of the message.
I see a full moon.
Oh, nice.
I don't
get Okay, I think we're getting punchy here, folks.
Well, that's more lighthearted than some of those cards.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay.
Well, it's perfect timing too. I just have a dog that just played the game of It's Now. I will see you guys next week.
Yeah,
Great
peace.
to talk.
Take care.
Bye, Jordan. Take care.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
So are you happy, Annabelle?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. And Samantha seems happy. Nick seems happy. I'm exhausted, so I need to leave. So
All of our eyelids are like,
yeah, I'm going,
up and down.
Okay.